Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. Today on Electric Evolution, I have got Paul Kirby, who is he's a director from EV Essentials, but also commercial director at the EV Café. And I'm very much a fan of the EV Café and your newscasts on a Friday morning. Absolutely love watching them. The kind of the vibrancy and fun that you have is just amazing. So thank you ever so much for joining me today, Paul.
Well, it's a pleasure, and if you have picked up anything from the EV Cafe, I do love the sound of my own voice, so it's always nice to talk. And particularly about our subject today, electric vans, right? So that's going to be exciting.
It's just honestly it's such a journey for me. I'm learning so much on a daily basis. I feel like at my age, I'm in my 50s, so I just feel like a sponge still, and I love it. Absolutely love it.
You know what? I think it keeps us young, Liz, because I'm in my 50s also, and every day is a school day. I didn't do very well at school, and I didn't like school, but I feel like I'm back at school almost on a daily basis. So listen, we're all learning. We're all only just a few steps ahead of each other in different subjects, and one will be ahead of us in one thing, and one will be behind us in another. So that's the exciting thing, right? We can all learn.
And the innovation that's happening at the moment is just mind-blowing.
It
To
really
me,
is.
you know, like I say, just start off with by giving everybody a bit of your background and how you got into the van industry and especially into kind of electric vans, because you are hashtag electric van man, aren't you?
I am, and it's evolved over the years, but it sort of feels like it wasn't an accident. I mean, I got into the commercial vehicle sector back in 2003/4. And in 2004, I drove the first, one of the first ever electric Sprinters that was available. You know, it was being run around Germany in 2004. It was full of batteries. I had the payload of a bag of crisps, so you couldn't get much on it. A top speed of 40 miles an hour, and it would go about 40 miles. And all the batteries were in the load area of the van. So, you know, thank goodness things have come on a long way since then. And then I was involved in the launch of the E-Cell Vito in 2008, and around that sort of time there was the Modec vehicle and the Smiths electric vehicle. And I just, they were there in my peripheral vision, but I didn't take them very seriously, and nobody did, and they all fell away. 2012, we saw, you know, Nissan EMV200, and then the Peugeot and the Citroen came out, and my leasing role, they started to come on my radar about 2015-16. And then, you know, we became members of the EV100 as lease plan, and we're taking this more and more seriously. And then I went to be the head of strategy, EV strategy for Vanarama, leaving lease plan. But that was really exciting. I did some cars. Don't tell anybody. Shh. But I did do a few cars back then and helped develop the strategy both for cars and vans. But what I recognised in the marketplace was that there was nobody really grasping the nettle of solving the issue of vans, and we really needed to have a voice in the marketplace, both at government level, with the lobbyists, but also with the fleets and the leasing companies, everybody. A voice of vans, and that is what I decided I would become, a gob on a stick, basically.
That's what I always say the same, but that's probably because I'm from Yorkshire. Sorry to anybody who's from Yorkshire, but you know what we're a bit like. So you have got a real spark about you, I've got to say. You know, I've heard you, I've seen you on your website, you know, and I've seen you on the EV Cafe, and just kind of the way that you explain things, and you're just so engaging. kind
No.
of during these sessions. I am a bit of a fangirl. I did say to you earlier, I'm a bit of a fangirl, didn't I?
Well,
But
but thank
ah,
you. And it's exciting what's going on in the marketplace. I'm actually one of these people that love change. Now, a lot of people are afraid of change and don't like change and don't enjoy change. I leapt into this role because I enjoy change and I don't want to be doing the same thing. So I get my energy, one, from talking to people, so that's part of it, and two, through enjoying change and this whole transitional thing. What's not to get excited about for that point? But I also get excited about the humble van too, because it's like you've heard the story, haven't you, that you give a boy a fish and he eats for a day. If you give a boy a rod, he feeds himself and his family for however long the rod stays working. Well, that's what a van is about. It's not a car that gets you from A to B. It's a tool within your business that drives performance and gives you value and helps your customers and does so many different things. What's not to get excited about in that context?
so go on, tell me what you're driving at. I mean, are you able to tell me what you're driving at the moment?
So
Is it another?
it's not a van at the moment, but I am getting I'm getting one of the vans that is relatively new in the marketplace. I'll have for a couple of weeks in a short space of time. Recently drove the VW ID Buzz Cargo, which is now on my Electric Van Man YouTube channel.
That's
But
what I saw. Yes, exactly.
yeah, but I'm actually driving a Kia e-Niro. That's my normal day-to-day vehicle, and our other vehicle is a Zoe. So we're fully wedded to this transition to EV, and we thought it would be inappropriate to be in anything else. So my wife has adopted it, and we're in it together. And we're going to be demonstrating the value and the simplicity of moving to electric, although that's not to oversimplify the challenges that the van market faces.
Yeah. So so how is the kind of the van and the truck market moving? How well is it moving towards
Mm.
electric?
So
How is what? Who are the early adopters in the sector?
yeah, so what we're seeing is the bigger fleets, right? So there are some companies, some smaller companies. So our own Sam Clark was a pioneer, really, in an electric delivery company. So Newt Cargo, he built that business from scratch, focused on cargo bikes at first, and then got electric delivery vans in the ENV 200, and I think the probably the Peugeot partner at the time, and delivered, electrically around London. There was another company, a little company called Hive, that are just focused on small businesses focused on their local area, delivering in a sustainable and an efficient way with zero emissions. So there's some great small companies out there kind of really delivering the goods in an electric fashion. But predominantly what we're seeing is big companies like the Royal Mail, Mighty, DPD, and a lot of companies like that that are going en masse. So, what we've heard from the Royal Mail recently is they'll have 5,000 electric vans by, I think it's either the end of this year or mid next year. DPD will be at 3,000. Mighty will be up there at 2,500, 3,000. Centrica, of course, well known to saying they have their whole 9,000 fleet done by, I think, the end of 2025, although supply of vehicles may be causing them a problem. So we're seeing some big successes, but we're also seeing quite a few challenges along the way as well. And, there's a good selection of vehicles available now, so many more use cases are being solved by electric vehicles, even down to towing now. With the Iveco e-Daily coming on, they're going to be able to tow at 3.5 tons, which is the first time that that's been able to happen, and
Right.
also taking significant power off. So vans are well known for being able to do work at the roadside from the vehicle itself, but that meant it
Mm.
had to run the diesel engine at 2,500 revs or thereabouts for long periods of time to drive pneumatic equipment. Now we're going to be able to take power off the vehicle and do that same job, but in a zero emission fashion. So there's a lot of really good stuff happening.
That's a lot happening then, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
because of my, I suppose, like I say, I'm quite naive when it comes to use of vans, and I've kind of probably said to you before that we don't have an EV yet, but part of this podcast is actually to try and understand it. It's educating myself and other people with regards to the choices and and what we can do to kind of to get there.
Yeah.
I suppose I was talking to somebody earlier about kind of the charging hubs. How do you manage a charging hub when it comes to vans and trucks even? How can a van or a truck actually charge, and how long does it take?
Well, really great questions, but I just want to come back to something you said there about, looking to educate yourself and others. That is the most important thing in this market at the moment, because whilst, I've just said there's a load of electric vans that are available, you do need to understand what those differences are and those nuances are before you can really make the leap. And what I didn't really say was what's happened that is surprising over the last couple of years in particular is the growth in the truck sector. So, what we're seeing is 7.5, 12, 16, 18, 26 ton trucks are now becoming electrified. And, there's some great new brands on the market in Teva and Volta. But of course, the mainstays of DAF and Mercedes-Benz and Scania and Volvo all getting involved. We're also seeing some collaboration between the truck companies as well, which is really pretty impressive, particularly around charging. So to come on to your point about charging, it isn't easy. That's the bottom line, because what we've got to do is get a lot of power, certainly in the truck world. So if you go into the truck world, you've got 600, 400 kilowatt hour batteries. Well, that's 5 Teslas right there, all needing charging at the same time in one go. And that's a big amount of power. You may or you may not know that power can be quite constrained in certain depots. The Royal Mail are experiencing this firsthand. And you've got to find a way of getting power into the spot that you need it. And it's not always easy. And that's what the Rapid Charge Fund is around. There's a big fund called Rapid Charge Fund, and £950 million that people could, that the grid is using to deploy energy into the right places, particularly around motorway service areas, but the strategic road network as a whole. And that is really important to recognise, because if you just think, I can just take an electric van or an electric truck and out there somewhere there is charging for me, it's not always that easy, and it really isn't always that easy. In an ideal world, you would have control over charging at home. For private people like myself, I do have that ability to charge at home, and that's an ideal scenario, both for cars and vans. So if you can bring your van home, you're a small business owner, and you bring your vehicle home at night and charge it, or you park it at the front of your building and charge it through the day. Either way, if you can charge your vehicle easily and regularly, then you're in heaven. But if all the time your vehicle is out on the road, and then when you get home you're in the 7th floor flat, how are you then going to charge? Well, you've got to rely on the public network. And what we're seeing is that the public network and vans are not quite fitting together perfectly just at the minute. And there are some challenges around that: public perception, council perception of vans operating within a particular area. And some of those companies that I've named, big parcel companies in particular, coming under some fire. But we need to understand their full business model before we kind of get critical around why they might be charging on the public network.
But people are very good at misinformation travels, or kind of bad word of mouth travels so much quicker than positive word of mouth, doesn't it? And then all you've got is this kind of knock-on effect of Chinese whispers that actually was never right in the first place, and it gets even, it kind of moves down, and just it it just
Gets
gets out
less
of
and
hand,
less
doesn't it?
right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of mistruths, but actually, or untruths, but then it's
Yeah.
just even more watered down, isn't it?
Yeah.
And worse.
Well, I think at the beginning they're probably well meant and they probably are based around some fact, but by the time we've got to the end of the Chinese whisper, we're giving something completely different out. But we have seen that, and we've probably all seen the pictures on Twitter or even LinkedIn. Is getting drawn into this of a truck parked across 6 bays, which how else are they going to charge? I'm sorry, but they can't do it any other way. And then, the parcel van parked at a Tesco site, or another parcel van parked in a council site, where it says no vans. But what are we supposed to do? We need a network
Yeah.
that's efficient and effective for vans.
And actually, it's inclusive. It's being inclusive. I talk about inclusion for people, but it's inclusion for people driving these vehicles as well, isn't it?
But yeah, people driving the vehicles and the vehicle types themselves. We need everything to be fit for purpose. So, I'm a big advocate of what Motability Operations and ChargeSafe are doing around accessibility standards for the ChargePoint network, but also ChargeSafe have said, well, Paul, what does the van requirement look like? Can we assess these charge points for vans? Yes, let's understand what is the accessibility like. Is there a height restriction? Is there just a lack of space in which we can park the vehicle in the first place? We could ask the question, would it be suitable for trucks? But we know the answer for that because it just wouldn't be. You can't put 7.5 or a 16 or an 18-ton vehicle into the same vehicle park as vans and cars. Vans and cars have historically shared space, but I don't think they're going to be able to for charging going forward because there is this conflict, the amount of time taken, the urgency around van charging versus car charging, and even the speed of charging. All of these things affect how we're going to navigate it.
So, do you think over time, and I'm going to just put this as an example, that batteries are going to reduce in size? Because if you think about, so my mobile phone here, it's an iPhone 12, and if you think about, the original car phone in inverted commas, for example, and oh my God, yeah, I had a manager in the 90s, like the early 90s. This manager of mine, he lived down south, but I was in Halifax, and he used to go, all right, I'm going to ring you on the car phone, and he'd get it out
Yeah,
of the car, and it was just like the size. It was like bigger than a suitcase, nearly, wasn't it? And
yeah,
it's kind of like you think about that, and I used to get so excited. Oh, he's ringing me on the car phone. Oh my God! And this battery, was just huge.
yeah.
So what length of time do you think it's going to take? I mean, I'm not sure about battery technology, but what timescale do you think it's going to be before it all starts getting that bit
Brilliant
smaller?
question. Really, really good question because what I think we our default setting is what's available today and will it work? And we base forever on today rather
Yes.
than going, actually, tomorrow there might be some innovation. And I had a chat with a guy from DPD, actually, parked up his Ford Transit van at the charge point. And I said, "Oh, how is it?" I talk to everybody, every person in a van at a charge point. I talk to them. Oi, you,
Yeah.
come here. What's it like? And he said, "Well, the van's great." He said, but I said, "I'm not sure the range is quite there yet." He said, "But with the development in battery technology, it'll be able to do 500 miles before we know it." And I was like, well, "Okay, it might not be able to do 500 miles, but I loved the ambition that he demonstrated. He demonstrated an understanding that actually technology is moving at a good rate of knots, and the understanding also that we need to have is that we don't actually need to go that far.
No.
Mostly on a daily basis, most vans are doing less than 100 miles and actually probably less than 80 on average. Now, there are, of course, exceptions, and we don't just kind of paint the whole picture with one brush, but
Huh.
um, the, uh, the the battery technology will get better and is getting better. So we were already got examples in China of batteries being able to receive 200 and 300 miles within 5 minutes. Really, really high speed and smaller batteries. Sort of denser, more flexible, but importantly for the commercial vehicle sector, lighter batteries. So this is already happening. It's just not here in the mainstream yet. And what we've got to remember is that a mainstream manufacturer like Ford or Stellantis Group, as like Citroën, Peugeot, Fiat, Vauxhall, they're typically working on life cycles of 7 to 11 years, and trucks are sort of 10 to 15 years. But what we'll see is a lot more development around batteries, and batteries will get smaller and they'll start coming in, and we'll get additional payload and we'll get quicker speeds for charging, and they'll go further. So, battery technology, I think, over the next couple of years, will get much, much better, and we'll see some developments. I don't know how quickly they'll get into the commercial vehicles that we're driving today, but I'm confident that will be noticeable, and people can get more and more confidence as we go forward.
So at the moment then, how much weight is a battery putting onto, say, kind of like a regular transit van? How much? I'm obviously you've got a battery instead of an engine, but I don't understand. I don't know about that weight differential.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
it's a really good question. So there's a couple of good examples of things that I know about. So I know that the Sprinter, Mercedes-Benz Sprinter L2H2, would normally have a payload of 1,200 kilos or thereabouts. In its electric version, it has a payload of less than 800 kilos. So batteries are significantly heavier than their associated engines and things like that. So what we've got is a situation where we're losing payload. And by losing payload, at 3.5 tons, that is, but losing payload at 3.5 tons as a gross vehicle weight, so the maximum a vehicle can weigh, we're losing payload. But the government have made a dispensation to allow vehicles to operate at up to 4.25 tons if they're alternatively fueled, battery electric vehicles. And so therefore you can actually operate these vehicles and get more payload. But I haven't answered your question. So the best way of answering your question is to give you the example of the Vauxhall or the Stellantis product. So a 50 kilowatt hour battery gives you a payload of 1,200 kilos in that van. If you go for the 75 kilowatt hour battery, it's a bigger battery, you can go further, you can go about an extra 50 miles or thereabouts, you lose 200 kilos in payload. So you're arguably saying that 25 kilowatt hours is equivalent to 200 kilos in terms of weight difference between the one and the other. So we know that the batteries are significantly heavier, and we're having to make a compromise that we've never had to make before. So if you wanted a bigger engine with a diesel vehicle, you just order the bigger engine. It didn't really make much difference in terms of payload, unless you went for a completely different type of engine, like went from a 4-cylinder to a V6, which you could do. But now, if you want to go further, you can carry less. And if you want to carry more, you've got to travel less. So it's a compromise that we've never had to make before. But now fleet operators need to consider that as well.
So that makes it a little bit more complex, but it's just, like you say, it's the thinking about it time. It's kind of like, it's education, isn't it? Education to fleet operators.
Absolutely, and that's why it's really important that manufacturers surface this, because we don't always do that. We're not always completely forthright, and it's not that manufacturers are trying to hide anything. I hope, but it's that they don't think of the knock-on effect of the different options that are available in the fleet space. So I think manufacturers just need to be a bit cleverer, because we're all people. Everybody's and it's just that the manufacturer, we're forcing them to say, right, you need to be telling us exactly what's coming down the pipe. And how it addresses the challenges, and what do we need to think about that's different now, and we're not getting enough of that.
Okay. So how can you help companies in general? What is it that you can do to help these companies in general if they're looking at electric van or truck adoption? What can you do to help them?
Well, so when I set up the company EV Essentials, I wanted to focus on three things. So consultancy, in terms of me operating with a company to understand where they are today, to properly ask all the right questions of the board. We've got a whole list, whole plethora of new people that need to be round the table as stakeholders when we're making these decisions. We need to think about the landlord. How long is our lease? Who else in terms of facilities, and do we need to dig up ground in terms of the charge points, and have we got enough power, and so many different people that will have an opinion. We definitely need the finance guy in the room, so that they can go, oh, actually we're going to have to pay more up front, but actually the cost of operating the vehicle is a lot less. So from a financial point of view, we need the best brains in the room on that as well. So we've got a different group of stakeholders. So that's number one. And as a consultant, that's what I would do, bring those stakeholders together, and then we'd kind of talk through the vehicles and how they operate and charging, and would look at maybe telematic data and stuff like that. Bring it all to the table and then make good decisions, because we've got the right information in the room and we've got the right people in the room. So that's the first thing. Second thing is getting training out there. And really helping drivers. Drivers are one of our most important stakeholders. I didn't mention them in the stakeholder discussion, but they should have been there in that list.
Yeah.
And then really helping them make good decisions about the vehicle, the way they drive it. If you drive an electric vehicle badly, you're going to use all the energy up. So don't do that. We'll help with training. We do training on two different levels, and I've used the word "we" there because we do this in the EV Café as well. So the EV Café is also a part of this training process in terms of its education. So education and training are kind of similar. Education is just putting the information out there. Training is helping land that information with individuals with creative products and ways of doing things, and looking people in the eye and saying, right,
and supporting them, and knowing that you're there to support them as well, isn't it?
Exactly. So training and then coaching. So I work with dealer groups to help the dealers understand the vehicles, and also how to portray that. So and then that brings me on to media as well. So you've got the consultancy, you've got the training, and the media is about, I work for some of the manufacturers, helping them bring real world information about their vehicles, and celebrate how you can operate them and promote these different things. So I'm working with different people to surface information, celebrate case studies, working with like Vital EV Solutions about their charging solutions, telematics companies around how the data and insight can help the transition to EV, and then the vehicle providers themselves, the manufacturers, in terms of surfacing these differences around payloads and battery sizes and range and charging, all of those things. So I do some of the media stuff. So those are the types of things that I do. And of course, the EV Cafe plays a huge part in, first of all, me getting the information, because I'm constantly learning, right? We talked about that at the beginning. But then the EV Cafe helps give a platform to deliver this training in a fun and engaging way, because when you've got a couple more people to bounce off of, it's a bit more engaging. I try and keep my energy levels up on just me in delivering training, but there's always going to be a better vibe if you've got a group of people doing hearts and minds engagement. And some of the biggest fleets in the country really need that hearts and minds engagement at a driver level, because the drivers can be really tricky to engage with. And can be really blooming stubborn as well. But we need to have some good, strong conversations to say, "Wait, this is the way it needs to be done now. Let's all get on board the best way," and give people reasons to get on board. The climate, air quality, health, all of these things. need to
It's
be
just very
surfaced.
different from them, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
it's because we've been through massive changes over the last few years anyway, but this is their livelihoods, isn't it? It's this is their life, and if they've always driven a van or a truck in a specific way, then
Yeah.
it's a different way to drive it, and you've got to learn again. But you know, that's the way we've, like you say, it's about the what and the why, the when and the who, and the
Mm.
how, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
so I think what you're doing with EV Cafe and what you're doing personally is, you know, it's groundbreaking. It's brilliant. It's kind of, you know, bringing it to everybody that needs to learn about it. So
Yeah.
to me,
I-
that's what's needed.
Yeah. And Liz, you mentioned a word we haven't touched on too much, but innovation, having an eye on what's on the horizon. And, you know, we're blessed with that much time, you know, that bit more time to be able to talk to people because people want to talk to us around that innovation piece. So, you know, I feel really privileged to have spent a bit of time with Volta trucks and Teva trucks, you know, looking firsthand at these new ways of delivering goods and services, and a completely different approach around the cab in the Volta truck. It's exciting to see. Spent time with Iveco coming to market with towing and getting power off. People that don't have that time, right? They've got busy jobs. They don't have that information coming to them, because this information comes to us now. Because with the EV Cafe, people want to say, oh, we want you to know about our latest innovation. You know, big charging hubs that are portable. You know, they can be dumped in a car park and you can just plug it in.
Yeah.
These things are exciting. The way that solar can work with batteries. All of this information comes in, and we've got to get it out there. And that's our
Yeah.
job. You know, we're privileged to see innovation firsthand, and some of it will work and some of it won't. But we get
It's a
to
bit like
see it.
Betamax, isn't it, or VHS?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
some will lead the way, and some will kind of like, you know, kind of fall behind a little bit. But actually,
Yeah,
at the moment, there's so much of it going on. I think
yeah,
what you're doing is kind of, in a way, I'm trying to do this a little bit on this podcast, is trying to engage and educate and bring it together in a sort of like a way that people are kind of happy to hear it, you know,
yeah.
and understand it more. So yeah, it's brilliant. So if people want to get hold of you, Paul, I mean, obviously you are very much a big part on obviously on the EV Cafe, but on LinkedIn as well, on social
Yes.
media. Where else can people find you?
Well, I think people are trying not to find me. I think that's probably, you know, people. God, how do we turn him off? Where's the switch? But
Not
no,
true.
like you say, I can be. It's funny when the vanity labels came out in LinkedIn. You know, you can choose. You might not know this, but you can sort of choose how you appear on the page on LinkedIn. And so I, of course, went Paul Kirby. You know, that's how I want to be. LinkedIn/Paul Kirby. And they said, "Oh, Paul Kirby's already gone." And I was like, "How rude." And then they said, "But the Paul Kirby is available." I went, "Oh, well, I'm the Paul Kirby, so that'll be me then." So LinkedIn, I'm LinkedIn/,
The
the Paul
Paul
Kirby.
Kirby.
I'm Electric Van Man on YouTube. Please subscribe and like and do all of those good things. I have a website, EV Essentials. I always think maybe I should make the website the same as the YouTube. But anyway, there we go. EV Essentials is the business name, and you can get me there. But Paul at electricvanman.com is my email address. And, you know, I suppose the clue's in the name there. And yeah, all my contact details are on LinkedIn, actually. I'm one of those unusual people that when you click contact info, you actually get contact info.
Contact
Yeah.
info. I know. I think I might be like that too.
Talking of
My same
innovation,
things.
right? Innovative
Yeah,
and
we may
forward
actually.
thinking.
I need to look at that // though, because I don't think I've got any of that. I'm not sure. I
Oh,
will have to have a
you've
look
got it.
now.
You've got to be the Liz Allan, right? That's
Yeah.
what you've got to be.
Oh, bless you. Well, listen, it's been lovely to speak to you. I really, really appreciate you coming on. And like I say, if anybody wants to contact you, there's some brilliant places to contact you, and please just tune into them 10 o'clock on a Friday morning.
Yes,
On
EV
YouTube,
Café.
so EV Café, or on LinkedIn. You'll see them coming up live on LinkedIn. I
Yeah,
actually drove myself slightly potty this morning because I actually had you on YouTube and LinkedIn, because I was waiting for you to come up live on both, and then you were on both, and I was like, I don't know where to look.
yeah. Well, if you're listening to this before December the 14th, 2022, then we've got our monthly webinar, and we're going to be talking about well-being running up to Christmas. So I think it's really important. But Liz, it's been a real pleasure to be on this podcast with you. I love that you're asking the important questions and enabling us to surface information that will help in the transition and accelerating the transition to electric vans, trucks, and cars too as well.
And cars. Listen, thank you ever so much. So I'm going to say goodbye now. Thank you, everybody. I shall see you next time. And thank you,
See you,
Paul.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon, and you'll receive all of our weekly videos. Thanks for watching. See you soon.